Being a mess is all part of life. These wise words come straight from today's guest, Rhonda Parker Taylor. Rhonda is the author of the best-selling fiction novel Crossroads, and our conversation goes far beyond the pages of her book. Together, we explore the challenges of life, the moments that call for celebration, and the profound experience of losing a loved one. This episode is a heartfelt dive into the realities of being an author and a human. Get ready for an inspiring behind-the-scenes look at life with Rhonda Parker Taylor. Welcome to Journey with Jake. This is a podcast about adventure and how through our adventures we can overcome the challenges of life that come our way. While I expect you will learn some things about different adventures, this show will entertain you. Each episode will feature a different guest or guests as they share experiences and stories from the different adventures they have been on. Not only will you be entertained, but you will also hear the failures and trials each guest faces and what they have done or are doing to overcome the hardships that come their way. My goal is to take each of us on a journey through the experiences of my guests with the hope that you'll be entertained and inspired to overcome your day-to-day challenges. After all, it's not all about the destination as it is about the journey. To the show. I'm Jake Bushman, the host of Journey with Jake. This podcast is all about overcoming challenges through adventure. While we often think of adventure as adrenaline-packed and action-filled, it doesn't always have to be that way. Sometimes our greatest adventures come in the form of persevering through school, tackling a tough project, or simply navigating life's twists and turns. This idea really hit home during my conversation today with fiction author Rhonda Parker Taylor. Before we dive into that conversation, I'd love to connect with you. Find me on Instagram at Journey with Jake Podcast, where you can check out show clips, sneak peeks of upcoming episodes, and get a better sense of who I am. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel at Journey with Jake Podcast if you prefer to watch the episodes rather than just listen. Don't forget to subscribe and share the show. Plus, Journey with Jake is proud to be a part of the Podmatch Podcast Network, home to some amazing podcasts. Visit podmatch.com/network to discover more great shows you'll love. I'm so excited for you to hear my conversation with Rhonda Parker Taylor. If you enjoy this episode, I recommend checking out episode 113 with fantasy author J.V. Hilliard. It's another great discussion you won't want to miss. All right, let's jump in and hear from Rhonda Parker Taylor. All right, I'm excited today. I have Rhonda Parker Taylor on the show with me today. Rhonda, welcome to Journey with Jake.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I hope you're having a good evening. And I hope your listeners are ready for a great discussion about how each of our journeys have led us to our own unique and authentic self.
I love it. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. Thank you for bringing that energy. Gets me fired up. So I always appreciate when I have great guests like yourself who bring that energy. So thank you very much. Before we get cranking into your journey and kind of telling about your story a little bit, let's go back a little bit. Kind of give us just the background of who Rhonda Parker Taylor is, where you're from, that sort of thing, so we get a little base.
Oh, I would love to. So I'm a Midwestern girl. I'm from Indiana. I grew up in a small town called Noblesville, which is just outside of Indianapolis, about 20, well, with traffic now, it's probably more like 35 minutes to an hour. But in the day when I was growing up, it was more like a one light town. And you didn't have street lights. You got on your bikes. You ran. You were in the outdoors most of the time if you weren't in school. It was one of those communities that everybody knew everybody and they knew everybody's business. But I also was kind of isolated during that period of time too, because my parents had chose to not send me to a public school. They sent me to a private school. So I literally went to Indianapolis every day for school from my kindergarten years to my senior years. So it's a very different experience when you have these small classrooms and you're social with the people that live around you and your neighborhood, you know them, but you don't go to school with them. So that brought a very unique perspective for me growing up. But at the same time, I think it was better. I used to beg my parents sometimes, let me go to, to Noblesville for school system. No, no, but they would have let my brother. And I think they made the right decision there, because for me, I think because I was so open to the world, I needed to have guardrails before I crashed and burned, being that way. And so being in a smaller community probably was perfect for me. But at the time, of course, we all have our thoughts on what we think should be best. Since then, obviously, I'm grown. I'm a seasoned young woman living in Indianapolis. I've moved out of the state a couple of times, but ended up wandering right back home. And I have found that this is where my roots are. I like the fact of being able to travel, have a journey, but come back to an area that I'm familiar with and that I can call home. So, as we talk more about our lives, I think the one thing I would like people to realize in their own lives is, one, you have a choice in your destiny of where you want to be, and two, just enjoy where you're at. It doesn't matter if, you're in an apartment, if you're living with family, you have your own house, you have a mansion, you have a tent. It really doesn't matter if you choose to enjoy your life. In doing that, you will find that you finally meet self-actualization, which means you can help others find their purpose.
So you're saying when you find yourself, then you're able to help others. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And see, I've got all these years of school, which I skipped in that little introduction, but that wasn't supposed to be necessarily. Most people wouldn't have thought that I would end up being with a doctorate, and a lot of that's because I was social, and I, kind of had this butterfly attitude about going. And my dad used to say, "You're like a damn butterfly. You go from flower to flower, and you won't stay focused on any one thing." And I have found that the education definitely helps, but it's not what makes you successful or happy.
Gotcha.
Just like money does.
Right.
It's really about your approach and how you feel about what you're doing in your life.
I like that. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so I heard a brother. Any other siblings, or just a brother?
I'm one of five.
One of five.
So
Okay.
Brothers and two sisters.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so,
Very good.
family and big Midwestern family that my dad decided to open up a manufacturing company out of a barn. How much more Midwestern can that be? And it's now a medium-sized steel manufacturing plant. So he always said, if it's meant to be, it's up to each person out there that's got their journey as an entrepreneurship. He always said, you can't afford not to be successful. So that means dig in at the trenches and make it work, especially when you have 5 kids.
Here's what's fun too. Okay, so you said you've got all this education, you've got a doctorate, but from what I understand, I was kind of reading your bio, you struggled though in school when you were in like an elementary, middle school age.
I struggled all the way through my senior year. I didn't really find my wings education-wise until after my senior years. Going to a private school, you had to, first I flunked kindergarten. You're right, I did. I flunked kindergarten. I'm a self-professed flunky. And then throughout school, I kind of got the C's and, I made it through. But at the end, at a private school, what's beneficial and then scary is you have to pass proficiency tests in all the main core classes. And if you don't get a B or higher, you don't graduate. And I had taken the English proficiency test. Here I am, a best-selling author now, and I had not passed. I'd gone through some of my own trials and tribulations, in life. And the teacher started saying, well, I've noticed you've kind of changed this year, and started talking to me. And she says, just let me tutor you over the summer. You'll pass it. And that's what we did all summer long. I got a job at Arby's, and I sat on her floor, and it was the English teacher, and she sat there and took me through all the rules, and it kind of opened up a model for me to be successful, because I learned that mentorships were important.
And she wasn't
And,
taking pay from you to do this? She was just doing
well,
this.
I thought she was going to. And then when I got done in the summer and I asked her how much I owed, I had saved up the money. She said, just pass the test.
Wow.
And
Very
to this
cool.
day, I probably would never have gone to college at all. And as you know, when you go to college versus your elementary and your high school years are different. College level is more hands-on, practical, not less memorization and less rules, more theories, more application. And so I found I thrived once I got into college, which was totally unexpected to me or anybody else.
Well, yeah, because your mind, you were thinking, I can't, this is hard to do up through high
Mm-hmm.
school. But you had someone who believed in you and helped you,
Mm-hmm.
which I love the lesson in that having someone there to support you and believe in you and give you that support, and didn't take the money either. Just said, I want you just pass this test. That's pretty cool.
And that's probably how I get modeled. I got modeled into education, working in the educational system at the college level, and then turned around and opened up the consulting of mentoring people because I found that it was important. And I found that by somebody believing in me, it made a difference and understood my struggles. She took the time to hear my struggles of what was going on in my life at that period of my time of life.
You cared. I like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So you alluded to something there. You said that you got your education and now you're a best-selling author, which is awesome. So tell us about this book, because from another thing I read, just looking up on you, I don't know if you had the idea like in 2020, but you didn't publish it till 2023 or something. Anyways, a lot of time went by from the time, the concept came about to actually getting it out there. Tell us what the book is and just kind of give us the whole story on that whole deal, if you don't mind.
Because it's one of those stories that it's not only a lesson learned for me, but I think anybody out there that has an idea or a thought or a dream or even a consideration. Sometimes we don't even know that that's what we're intended to be. Will realize that if they just start putting things into practice and face their fears, they can do anything that they really want to. It just takes you doing that. So I did write Crossroads, and Crossroads is a fiction novel based out of Indianapolis. It is fiction, but it's not true crime, but it's about a young girl that loses her life at the beginning, and then there is a executive that graduated from IU. Her name is Paris Pennington, and she ends up on the jury duty, and she realizes her life is simply just not what she thought it was going to be. As she goes through the whole legal process, she realizes that there are no winners and losers in the legal process. They're all losers. Even her, as a workaholic, working on a jury, realizing that, hey, wait a minute, the reason that I don't have a personal life at that point in time in her life is because she works and she's dedicated to her organization, and then she realizes that things are happening around her and she doesn't understand why they're happening. People are starting to get sick and die all the way around her. And it's like a game of Clue of, you think you know what's going on, but what ends up happening is totally unexpected, even to her. And the IPD has to figure out why all these things are happening around her. But my goal in it is kind of twofold. When I went into the process of writing, I was doing it as wanting to do it because it was a weakness and wanting to prove that I could do it because I like to read. And then I had been working in a crime watch community group that was overseeing the courthouses, watching how things were unequal and how things weren't always right. And it's not what you always think it is. And in doing that, I thought, well, I'm going to show people just what the legal system's really like. And then as I got into it, the characters kind of took over. I'm a people person. So I started realizing that there was more. It was more about life balance. So I took the characters in Crossroads and created a life workbook for anybody that's out of balance. And I'm not just talking about career and work balance. I'm talking about the 13 dimensions of your life, your finances, your relationships, your health, your spirituality, all of them. Take them all. And I took a workbook approach. Each character is a case. And then you go through and you learn about each of the dimensions. And then you do exercises. So, like if you were my client, I would say, tell me, if you were in the perfect world, would it look like? Buy the house. Tell me what house you'd live in. Tell me what state you would live in. Tell me what work you'd be doing. And we would sit down and do it. And then I'd sit down and say, well, what kind of things would you be doing with the money that you had and, that you like to do? And, it might be travel. It might be all these different things. And then I make them write down what they're actually doing in their lives every day. You find a huge, huge gap of what you're
Right.
doing, what you really enjoy doing. And some of them are simple. It might be a puzzle. It might be reading a book. It might be cooking. It might be, most people don't know this about me, but I love mowing grass. So I like to get on the tractor and do all 3 acres and sit there and zoom like I'm on a go-kart and, and the smells that come up from doing it. You find out things about yourself. So I wrote it in 2003 is when I think when it was finished. And I wrote 5 of them, 5 fiction novels. And then I had a publisher and then they backed out. I had a traditional publisher. And so it sat there. And one day my sister said, when are you going to do something with those, those books that you said you wrote? And I'm like, I'll do it someday. I got this, I got that. She said, no, that's not why you're not doing it. She says, you're afraid. And I was like, well, she might be telling the truth there. She says, you don't want to be vulnerable and it work. You put all this work into it and all this thought. And if you share it, people might not like it, might not buy it. And she was right. It really came from everything that I teach and talk to my friends about, my clients about. I was perfect at pushing them out there to follow their passions, but I wasn't doing it for myself all the time. I was too busy helping them find their dreams.
Gotcha.
So
Was
it's
that
out
what
there, yeah.
was that what
Time.
propelled you to finish it then? Was that
Yeah. So out and then I was like, am I going to do the traditional publisher again? Am I going to do this? So I ended up going with a hybrid publisher, JJ Hibbert, which is and Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank. And then, so they helped me put it all together and get it out. And then they helped me present it to Meryl Hemingway, who is the Academy Award winning actress and model and
granddaughter,
author.
right?
Yep.
Is she the granddaughter
Yep.
of Ernest Hemingway? Okay.
Yeah, she's the granddaughter. And, that was another journey that I had to go through. And that was, okay, bite the fear all the way down and get that letter written and send it to her. And that was the first person other than those that helped, maybe edit or, a sister or somebody that, knew I was writing them reading segments. So that was the first person to do a full read through it. So I jumped all the way in it. And now I'm, as they would say in Florida, knee high in alligators.
Absolutely. How do you think your struggles from, elementary, high school, middle school, how did that shape your writing style at all, or did it affect it at all?
It did, because what I have learned is it wasn't a lack of ability. It was the inability to see it. Like if there was a mistake. And to this day, if I do a text message or something, I could hit send and see every typo in it if I didn't have a process in place to catch them. A lot of that's concentration. It could be ADHD. During my school years, they didn't really test for any of the learning disabilities. Could be a little bit of dyslexia where I don't see me writing numbers, but it could be because you're typing now. So you could be hitting numbers or letters backwards. So it made me realize the importance of rereading, editing, and improving. So it did really change my process more than anything. So I don't even think about editing the first roundabout because I already know it's going to be there. So I just accept it. I've accepted my flaw. Then I go back and I see a bunch of them, and then I go back again and I see a bunch of them. So I do it in chunks. Then after that, but I get the story out. I love to tell a story.
So you get the story out, but you don't worry about all, because you know there's going to be the edits. Those are going to be there. So you just, boom, you just get it out there.
Right. Which I think helps. And then I use a lot of my research abilities from being in all those years of college and writing at the college level, pulling in resources or listening to resources, depending on what it is or what mood I need to be. I might listen to some music, or I might, during a segment that I had to be real particular about, which was a 911 call, listening to what 911 calls, how do people sound when they're calling in that they saw a dead body? That's not something you hear every day.
Yeah, you don't, hopefully you don't know that. I mean, yeah, that's something that you have to learn. And
right, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I do a lot of the research along the way so that it has that feel to it too. That. So, and then same thing with personalities. I try to make sure that they're a little bit different. Then it's almost like you could go in and think, this sounds like somebody that I might have been friends with. All of them. Even the ones that you might think are less desirable. You're like, oh, he partied too much last night and he got himself in a pickle. And he is, because now he's got to decide, hey, am I going to turn on one of my friends and say that he did it? Or am I going to take the charge because I was there? It's so and that's how many times have we all made bad decisions that we have to decide how are we going to handle these.
Definitely. I still think it's amazing that you finally had it done. You said you wrote 5 books or whatever, but nothing got published till just recently, just a few years ago. What does that tell you about you and who you are, the fact that you did it finally?
It does 2 things. It inspires me to do more and get the other ones out, which the workbook will be out around Christmas. And then it will go into the second fiction one. But it also makes me a little bit sad for myself because I could have done it all along. And that's why I think it's so important for everybody, as life is busy anyway. So at least make sure you're following the things that are the most important to you. I recently took a picture. It was after a podcast, and I was like, I think I kind of like this look. Let me take a picture with my phone, and it can be one of my next ones out there. And then I was sitting there looking at it, and kind of a strong face for a woman, and and I'm looking at it, and then I started thinking, and that for some reason, I think it was the Miss America pageant, or it was a Sunday. So I think it was either that or the Universe pageant was on. And I was looking at these young women. And I thought, if I could tell the younger me what this older woman has to say, and if I compared them, are they the same person? And that same person was always there. And I needed to pull it out. I needed to accept it and quit looking for validation through people and make it validation through me. Because a lot of the detours I took in life, and detours are wonderful, don't get me wrong. I have no regrets for any of the detours I took, but they probably prolonged this project several more years. So maybe I needed to go through some of the journeys and those to be ready to accept and work as hard. Because I'll tell you, everybody thinks you publish a book and you become a millionaire overnight. It is one of the hardest, and I've been in a lot of businesses. I've been manufacturing. I can bend steel. I can do a paint line. I can, do a press and for steel, and I can do a laser, and I've worked in finance and I've worked in education. Book and publishing is the hardest business out there. The margins are small because it's still a business. The margins are small, and every person you meet, you have to try to sell them. It's a one-on-one exchange with the reader, and the reader has to appreciate the work that you've done, and not everybody's going to appreciate you. So you have to become thick-skinned enough to continue, even when you may get a bad review or you get a no from a, a Barnes and a Noble or one of the bookstores. But guess what? If you keep on knocking, the door's open. So you just have to keep on doing you.
Who would you say is your ideal audience or your ideal reader for Crossroads?
I would say, well, anybody 18 and older, since it does have a crime scene in it. I think both men and women have liked it between that and 65. Fiction, since it's fiction, they must like fiction and suspense. It's more like a Grisham or an Christie feel versus a suspense that is like which is more fantasy. It's not like that. It's more like a Grisham or a Agatha Christie Patterson, one of those kind of. But it's a quick read, so a lot of people like to simmer in the details because it's personality and behavior oriented of the people. It's not so much of the detail that you will find like in a key.
Gotcha. When you finally got it done, you got it completed and it got published, what did you do to celebrate that? Did you celebrate that?
Well, I think the biggest celebration, well, there was two. The first celebration was when Meryl Hemingway endorsed it, wrote the foreword, and sent me the YouTube video called Meryl Hemingway praises Rhonda Parker Taylor's Crossroads. And you see that little heading in the blurb and you listen to it. And I swear I was the first 1,000 views of it. Because I kept playing it and I kept playing it and I kept
You're like, is
playing
this real?
Yeah, because you don't think it's going to happen to you, and you don't, that feel is worth every second that you spent, writing the novel, working with the editors, working with the people, talking about it, negotiating with it, every second of it. And then reality came in. Okay, now what? You said you just wanted to publish it and like, what's going to happen now that you've published it? So then the second one is when I planned the first book signing, I think. And you have that fear, and I was always, I told you I was social, so I was always the one that had the parties at the house. And when I was young, I felt those butterflies of, is anybody really care? Is anybody really going to show up? And I always got them when I was a kid. I was always worried, I'm going to have this party and no one's going to show up. And, I'd always have them themed. It was Halloween or Polish dinner night or whatever, So I got Noblesville, Barnes and Noble to host it. And they're a smaller store, but that worked great because it doesn't have the cafe that most of the other ones have. And as person after person that had read it came in, and I was supported very well by the people that had grown up with me. I looked around. My high school dean was there. My elementary principal was there. I have a group of friends that we've been friends since pre-kindergarten, pretty much. A few of them came in and out of the group, but we were a small school, 50 in our graduating class. So we all know each other pretty close. I was looking around, and we call ourselves the Breakfast Club because we had so many rules. We were always in detention. And I can still tell you today, you can't chew gum in school. And we'd have to write sentences if you did. Chewing gum at HCS is direct disobedience to God. And you have to write it 500 times because you've been told not to chew gum. And I'm looking around, and that thrill of saying, you know what? Not only did I do it, everybody else is proud that I made it through the struggle and the learning challenges. And, being a woman in the 80s, 90s, was even harder than it is today because there were no guardrails to protect. So, the discrimination that women could go through today, back then there were opportunities. We couldn't even wear pants to school. We wore skirts. So, things change. you know, and you have to change with it. And to be able to celebrate with people that knew me all my life was just one of the best things and best journeys, that I could ever have taken.
I love that. And that's just got to be fun too, to, people recognizing what you've done and have that little moment where you kind of celebrate it a little bit and have the book signing. So you were nervous for it, but it exceeded what you thought. Did it exceed your expectations, the book signing?
Because it was everybody that I loved, and that genuinely cared about me. So what I think that people don't understand about their dreams and their passions, and you don't hear people talking about, is your journey is meant to be alone. But the celebration, it's not your family or your friends that are supposed to write the book or plan the party or all of these things. It's meant for you to do it. But when it comes to the celebration, we should all be celebrating each other. And as we celebrate the journey that someone's taken, it could be someone's gone through a divorce. And then when you do that, when I went through a divorce, I took a trip by myself to Belgium. And people say, why Belgium? I was like, well, it was 2 hours from Paris and it was 2 hours from Amsterdam. And I never got out of Belgium. It was the most wonderful experience I ever had for myself. But it was a journey for me. And so when we take journeys for ourselves, doesn't mean you don't take your family. Because your family comes along in every journey you go, all your good ones and your bad ones, and they're going to tell you about all. That's their role. But when you're on that journey, enjoy it.
Enjoy the journey. Absolutely. That's why I always like to say, it's not always about the destination as it is about the journey. That's kind of what I say on this show, because it is for sure. And kind of speaking of that, I know a lot of times in our journeys, we have challenges, things that don't quite go right. What about you? What are some of the challenges that you faced and how have you kind of overcome those?
Well, I've talked about the learning ones. I've had many heartaches through my life, and all of us do. Life isn't about avoiding them. It's how you handle them. One would be the loss of my son. He was shot and killed at work, which was a huge one to tackle. In my youth, and one of the reasons the reoccurring themes in all the books that I've written have knives. Someone pulled a knife on me, and so we all have very pressing emotional challenges. It could be a divorce, like I said, it could be a job loss, it could be mental health issues. But when we find a system and a passion for self, the system keeps you in the positivity, and the journey helps you keep moving through those rough patches. Because those rough patches, they're gone in a flash if you allow them to be, but it's a choice. And you have to be self-aware enough to know, wait a minute, I'm struggling with this. It could be something very small that's got you struggling in a day. Someone cut you off, when you were driving. But it could be life-changing sometimes if you don't handle it right. You could wreck your car, you could get distracted, you could miss an appointment, you could do all these things. It's all about how we handle them. And that journey allows us to gain our interrelationships again with ourselves and others.
When you're in the middle of it, when you, for example, you're struggling with heartache, you lose your son. That's a huge thing. How do you find that because I know when you're in the middle of it, it just seems like so hard to get out of it. And where's the end going to be? How do you do that?
Well, first you have to realize and name it. Name what it is. Whatever that struggle is. If there's a person out there that's listening right now and you're going through a struggle, name it. Give it a name. What is it? And for me, like bad news, I look and I say, this is what's happened to me, but it's not going to define me. I'm not going to not get out of bed because this happened to me. Bad things happen to good people sometimes. Sometimes we internalize it and we don't realize that this is a part of life and a part of what shapes us. And in the case of whatever struggle it is, anytime I've gone through, whether it was taking care of my parents when they were sick and dying, or, my son, or some kind of malice that someone had towards me, or whatever, an ending of a relationship or friendship, whatever it might be, I realize that things are for a season. And if I look back 3 years from that point, it's going to have a lessened impact on me. So I put one foot in front of the other and fake it until the rest of my attitude goes with it. Doesn't mean I'm not crying and I'm not a mess, because God knows I'm a mess every day, even when something trying isn't happening. I'm running to a podcast. I'm writing a journal. I'm trying to take a phone call, and I'm trying to be a good person too at the same time. And you can't always do all that. So being a mess is all part of life. So I give myself some grace, and I realize that I have a very childlike brain sometimes, and I start singing silly jingles from some of the cartoons we watched, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Frosty the Snowman, put one foot in front of the other, or heat my, like, maybe someone's got me upset, Heat Miser, with the song that Heat Miser, I might play it on my phone for 10 times just so I can get over the anger and laugh, I might be the Heat Miser, somebody else might be the Heat Miser. And then, you learn then to start laughing at some of those negative emotions and realizing that if I can control my own emotions and I can analyze others and see that they're going through something, we can just be better off and finding a way of solving the problem. And, some of that is letting people pray for you. Some of it's allowing people, to go talk to a therapist. Some of it might be that you go to an AA meeting, or because you're drinking too much. It could be anything. It could really be anything that's got you in the dumps. You just have to decide right then and where that I'm aware that there's a problem. This is what I'm going to name the problem. I'm going to claim that it's not going to completely decimate my life. And then I put a plan out.
Love it. Man, amazing. Would you mind, if you don't mind, tell me a little bit I just want to know a little bit about your son. What was he like? What was his personality like? What's some of his characteristics?
He was very special. And I say that special because I chose him, he chose me, and his biological mom chose me. So he was adopted. I was his guardian, and he was struggling in his own life, and she didn't have the ability to care for him as he needed, and so we made an agreement that he could come and stay with me. Many families are blended like this, and that I would take that caregiving role. And he loves steaks. He would always say, even if it was Thanksgiving, make sure you make me a steak. So that's what we do for his birthday. We eat steak. He was a football player and a basketball player, and he thought he was Reggie Miller and ran his mouth like a choo-choo train. But we all loved him. And, when you're blessed with somebody being so selfless to give their own child to you, to give them a better chance at life, get them to go to college, get them to, do all of these things, you do not shun that responsibility. And you realize just how lucky you are. I could have, at any point said no, it would have been okay. And to this day, we're still, me and his biological mother is still, it got him raised. He had a better life, and then someone took his life. What we tried to prevent by doing this agreement ended up his destiny anyway. So went to a bar that he was a bouncer and shot him.
Wow. Okay. So he worked at the bar. He was a bouncer there.
They had put a young man out of the bar, and then when they opened the door at last call, he shot 4 people.
Wow.
Similar to so many people's story, only this was in 2009. The journey is never going to be easy. It doesn't matter if it's my child, somebody else's child, someone's parents. a loss of job, an illness. We all go through struggles. And if we're prepared and we find some resiliency back up through the journey of happiness and the journey of when we got on to start taping, we were talking about, some people talk about jumping out of planes. I used to think I would want to jump out of a plane, but whatever the journey is that brings you a smile, you got to do it daily. I love working. There's something mentally wrong with me. I'm one of those people, and that bought into, just like Paris Pennington in my book, that work is good and that you find your purpose and you move through it. And a lot of people are like, I'm not going to work, I can't imagine retiring. But my dad was that way. My sister's that way. I'm that way. But that's what, that's how we were raised. It's the culture that we were raised in.
So you've kind of alluded to it a little bit, and you kind of gave a little bit of definition for that. So let's go back and kind of revisit it then. For you then, because not jumping out of planes, you're not a plane jumper out of her person. What does adventure mean to you then?
Adventure means exploring the world with openness. I love to travel abroad. Now that I'm older, I may not jump out of the plane. They would have to push me out, and I would have to be attached to someone to pull the cord, because my emotions would be I would probably not, I would probably panic and open up the parachute and end up without a parachute or something rather than pulling the cord. So it would have to be some kind of bungee. So for me, it's openness and learning. I love to learn. I love to see, different cultures and different foods and try them and learn about them and really have a fullness of understanding of others, which comes with why I was social as a child. I love spending adventure. To me is seeing an old friend that I haven't seen. I've got so many of them that I may see once a year, that we live all around the United States and the world, but being able to see them, and say, okay, we're going to get together at this point and someone's in town or something. Those are the adventures that I value. I love opening my blinds. And that's so simple, to look outside. People say that's silly. I like to mow the grass. And I love animals, because my dad used to say, you can tell how the economy is by the trucks on the road. And I used to tell him, which kind of tells my personality, but you can tell somebody's worldview by how the world is handled by them and how the animals are treated. So for me, watching a fox right now is deer mating season. So the males are pushing, and I'm sitting there worried about the babies, even though they're going to be in my yard still. But the male's trying to push the babies away from mama so they can mate. Whatever it might be, just don't come in my house and we'll be fine. So we do all the preventative stuff that we have to, and let nature be nature. And seeing it brings joy. Like I mowed my grass a week and a half ago. We haven't had a lot of rain. And I was preparing for the leaves. And I know the next round, because it's a wooded lot, is going to be everything's turning all the beautiful colors right now. And it's pretty, but I know they're going to be falling, and there's going to be some work that's got to get done.
Love it. I love those simple pleasures, which is an adventure in and of itself. I love that. I love those simple things. Those are the things I enjoy. I love looking at deer. I love looking at wildlife as well. I love that. I can relate to that quite a bit. So what does the future hold for Rhonda?
We'll be working. I will be working, and I will be maintaining my health and doing all the balances. The next thing that came out, I talked about it earlier, is this is the actual cover. It's
I love it.
Life balance. It's a workbook approach to making sure that you make your happiness and dreams in all 13 dimensions. It talks about how to be mindful of your, not only, so the physical health is not dieting. It's not about that. It's about what are the standards to making you healthy and happy, and how can you build them into your life? I go to the chiropractor. He told me today that I needed to do more leg lifts because Sometimes I get a little dizzy, and it's not the blonde in my hair. So it's because I get vertigo if I've been sitting at a computer too much. So there's different things that you can do that just makes you have a fuller life, and that's what the workbooks are about. After that comes out around Christmas, there's another fiction novel, and the working title for it is Chosen, and it's about each one of the characters in Crossroads has their own book, and it will be diving, or as AI would say, delving into how we sometimes don't listen to that still voice inside of us, and we become victims because we don't. And that we train ourselves sometimes to be victims and we don't even know it.
Awesome. You got a lot going for you. This was awesome for me. I gained a lot by speaking with you. Thank you so much for coming on Journey with Jake.
Thank you, Jake. And I appreciate you having me, and everybody out there, know that Jake has a journey for you, and you need to keep listening, share, like, and follow.
Thank you so much to my guest, Rhonda Parker Taylor, for joining me on the show and sharing her incredible thoughts and stories with us. Don't forget to check out her book, Crossroads. You can find it on her website at rhondaparkertaylor.com, and follow her journey on Instagram at Rhonda Parker Taylor. And a big thank you to all of you for tuning in to Journey with Jake each week. Your support means the world to me. Next week's episode is an adrenaline-filled adventure. I'll be talking to Thomas McPherson about the thrilling world of base jumping. But as always, we'll also dive deeper into the human side of the story. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until next time, remember, it's not always about the destination as it is about the journey. Take care, everybody.